A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90, broadcasting from the Central Building here in the heart of our city, Kampala, live on our website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. You click on the icon with the word Listen Live. Now, Radio 1 is also coming to you live on the different radio listening apps, which you can obtain from the app store of your smartphone. You look for any download, and as long as you have an internet connection, you should be able to listen to us by finding that Radio 1 on the apps, the different apps that are located in the app stores. We also have the option of DSTV, which is on your TV set. If you have a DSTV connection, you look for audio channel 897. Today, President Yoweri Museveni fulfilled the constitutional obligation of delivering the State of the Nation address, which typically is presenting the status of how things are moving in the country 1 year down the road from the time he spoke, and also laying out some of the key legislative policy positions and some highlights that suggest where the budget will be focusing. So this event took place today at Kololo, where all members of parliament and other dignitaries assembled, and the president talked about a number of issues. But the first thing which was done there was the launch of the fourth national development plan, which is a blueprint for transforming this country into a 500 billion economy. It has a number of projects there, including industrialization, including infrastructure development, human capital development, among other things. And the president thinks that this is the right direction for the country to take. He's talked about Uganda being the 7th fastest growing economy in the world, growing at 6.3%, saying next year we will be growing at 7%, and with oil we'll be growing into double digits. He actually says Uganda is unstoppable, looking at where it's headed. Security said it's robust despite some few challenges here and there that security forces have been able to stamp out. He talks about more roads being tarmacked, strategic bridges being constructed. It's hailed scientists the progress they have made in a number of things, including Chira Motors, where we are now producing electric buses. He talked about boosting domestic revenue collection, the target next year being 37.4 trillion shillings. He also talked about Parliament and the great job they did passing the UPDF amendment bill. He actually said it was going to be one of those strategic mistakes, so they saved the country from a big challenge, insisting that matters of the army cannot be taken to magistrate courts. And the last thing the president did was actually to officially open the 5th session of the parliament, and meaning that the MPs can now officially begin doing their work, starting with listening to the budget speech next week on Thursday. As far as Parliament's performance is concerned, over the last session, they passed 35 bills, according to a report given by the Speaker of Parliament, Anita Amongo. Two guests today on the show: Mr. Julius Mukunda, Senior Economist and Executive Director, Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. Good evening, Mr. Mukunda. It's a pleasure having you here.
Good evening, Addison. Good evening, listeners. It's a pleasure being here.
Right, we expect to be joined by our second guest, Dr. Robert Ojambo. He's a Senior Lecturer and Head of Department of History, Archaeology and Heritage at Kyambogo University. He's also a political analyst. Julius Mukunda, I know it's one of your biggest events on the calendar.
Yes.
Listening to the State of the Nation address and giving feedback about it. Your impression for this particular event that happened today?
This is a unique one because it is coming to the end of the financial year. It is coming to the end of the term of office for the president. And I think he also we also need to understand that next year is an election year, so it is also like an accountability report for the 5 years, not just for last year, the last financial year. And I think in one way the president was was in a celebratory mood because I think a number of things have been done. But in another way, we know that we still have so many outstanding things that are supposed to be done. It is historic because we are having the National Development Plan 4 that has been launched and has been signed off for the next 5 years. So at least we have a roadmap where we are heading to in the next coming 5 years that are going to come. And I think, which is, for me, it is very critical and very important that we have a plan, because if we don't have a plan, then that becomes a problem. But also is that this is one of the few plans that we have had, the fourth one, where there has been a greater participation of citizens in the formulation of its priorities and all the rest. The president, of course, talked about security. I think, again, we can see that probably right now we're an island, a country that is surrounded by a number of our neighbors are in turmoil, and we are not. But we have done so much on our borders to protect our borders, but I think internally there is still room for improvement, because we still have Bakanyama beating up people in the street. So the crime rate needs to be sorted out in this particular country. Of course, when he came on oil, of course he praised that we have got our refinery. I mean, we have got the ECOPIS, the pipeline is in the process. But again, me and you, we know that this oil production has been postponed for forever. We needed it yesterday. It's not coming. They had promised us 2023, it didn't. 2024, it didn't. We had been promised this year, it has not. And now there are indications that we are being promised next year. So I think that's an item that is still an unfinished agenda for the president. I think for me it is important that we get back to the drawing board and understand why our project is very slow in terms of implementation. Poverty is another area. Again, I think the president was on a celebratory move because whether you like it or not, poverty rates have reduced in this country from 20% to 16%. Whether we say we don't have money in our pockets, but those are the numbers that are out there right now that we're going to start using. But I think the biggest part around poverty is that we are still in a situation whereby just a little bit of a disaster, you just fall back into below the poverty line. And I think this goes on with the kind of social expenditures we make, especially education, especially health. Just like a colleague said, one medical bill like this definitely sends you below the poverty line. In terms of the economy, I think, which is also my biggest interest, I mean, again, the president, I think, is in celebratory move because there are some good indicators that definitely you will not ignore. Inflation has been subdued at 5% below. The shilling is stable, and I think it is among the most stable shilling across the African nation. And I think this is very important because really having an exchange volatility in the economy becomes a problem, because if you import your goods at an exchange rate of 100 shillings, by the time they reach the exchange rate is at 120, it becomes very bad for business. So on that, I think he has scored. If it comes to revenue generation, again, I think he has scored because the only challenge is that we are looking, because I think he quoted and said in 1986 when we came to power it was only 5 billion being collected, and today we are collecting 31.9 trillion. So I mean, again, you give it to him because these are the things, and some of these things definitely you could see a number of reforms that have taken place, especially in URA. Issued around automation of business processes, I think has really achieved so much. If you want to know how automation has really achieved, go to Nansana, where they were collecting around 6 billion, and now they are collecting 11 billion just by introducing IRAS, a system to collect taxes. Nansana municipality. Okay. Yeah. If you know what automation means and how it can be a game changer, just go to Nansana, you'll be able to do that. I think another interesting part for me is the value addition. Value addition, especially for milk. In 2014-15, our milk was valued at, we could be able to export milk valued at 28.7 million US dollars, but by the end of 2004, we could export milk at $284 million. That's the issue of value addition that we have been talking about, that you can really be able to add value and even get more money. But for me, the question of milk, I want to tie it with the commercial diplomacy that we have been talking about. This issue is a game changer for this country. Every ambassador, wherever you are, you must know how much of your country products you are selling in that particular country. And I don't know the ambassador of Morocco, but really Ambassador of Morocco did an incredible job to ensure that we can actually export powdered milk, our own milk, powdered milk, to Morocco. I think this is incredible. To the people who did that, is kudos. So if you're an ambassador, please, we want also to send our avocados, we want to send our matoke, we want to send our maize to your embassy, to those countries where we're residing. And this really requires a lot of investment in commercial diplomacy. So when you look at that balance on the side of what we have achieved, I think the president had his point. But there are certain outstanding things that really we needed to listen to the president tell us really how he's going to address some of these things. Because I think for me the question of debt is very, very important. We are being told that our debt is sustainable. If it is sustainable in terms of what we can be able to pay, then that is correct. But we are being squeezed further and further in terms of amount of money available for us after we have paid the debt. Because if you have 72 trillion and out of that you only have 40 trillion to spend on yourself, then I find that really that our fiscal space has considerably reduced, and our ability to really execute our own priorities and programs become of a challenge. So that is an area that I wanted the president really to put much more emphasis. One, to ensure that where are we getting the money we are borrowing? Are we picking it from the commercial banks here on the streets in Kampala, or that we intend to do external borrowing? So that's very important. Where we should be getting the money. The other important element is that how are we going to prove our capacity to execute projects and programs on time, but also on budget? Because when I look at Kampala now, this work that is being in Kampala was supposed to be done 2 years ago. So it is not because we didn't have the money, but it's because of our ability to execute this project, the Kampala Roads project, on time or also on budget.
The other day we saw the launch of an effort by Minister Kasaija at the media center, which he said partly addresses this issue, that there will not be delay in implementation of government projects going forward, because that particular effort, the investment, I don't know how he termed it, the investment policy,
the national PIMS. PIMS policy, yes.
Will be handy in addressing these issues. Is that not adequate? You were part of that.
Yes, and yeah, that's what I'm saying, that it's coming now, but it's something that we should have done 10 years ago, really. If we had done it 10 years ago, by now it would be very, very, very far, because the PIMS policy is to help us ensure that we have a framework on how to ensure that projects, first of all, how they are conceptualized is very important, because you just don't come up and say, I want a road. You want to know how is it being conceptualized, what kind of problems it's going to address, and then it goes through a proper process to ensure that the project that is going to be implemented actually is in line with our NDP, is going to address particular problems. We are ready to execute it on time, because when you bring here a nuclear program project and we have no capacity to implement it, then it becomes a very big challenge. So the PIMS policy really is helping us to ensure that we have the procedure systems in place to ensure that projects and programs are executed on budget for some time.
Right.
I would have wanted also the president really to address the issue of right of way, because this is something that is really delaying most of our projects. We don't have the right of way, Kenneth and dear listeners, that when a project starts, yes, I agree that as Ugandans you have a right to your property, but when you have a car on the market, it is 10 million, but because the government wants your car, and you put it 10 billion. And now nothing can take place. So really for me, I think the government must have a way of ensuring that we have a right of way, and this is going to help us actually improve on our project implementation. Right now we have projects that have been abandoned by contractors simply because government has failed to get the right of way. The owner of the land has said, no, me, I don't want your compensation. Actually, people say, I don't want your compensation. Take the road somewhere else. It should pass somewhere else. And
so you are in support of compulsory acquisition?
I'm in support of ensuring that we put a procedure and a mechanism of acquiring land for national development.
And that is the compulsory acquisition of land. That's the policy that government wants to push.
Right now, what is happening is that people who own land are overcharging government simply because they know government cannot acquire that land if they refuse.
Right, but we also, some of those people are actually, people who actually have deep knowledge about where government is going to carry out a certain project, so they buy land ahead.
And that is the corruption we are talking about.
And then
yes,
price that out as
he puts out a house of 10 million and tells government, by the way, my house had invested 1 billion. That's the kind of corruption we are talking about. Because they somebody knows the plan.
The speculators.
The speculators. So there must be a way of banning their hands.
All right. Our second guest, Dr. Robert Ojambo, who is head of the Department of History, Archaeology and Heritage, Jambogo University. He's also a political analyst. He has just walked in his studio. Good evening, sir. It's a pleasure having you for the first time on Spectrum.
Good evening, Kenneth. It is just a tug of war to reach here. I was stuck at City Square for 30 minutes. Vehicles are not moving.
Exactly.
And we are just in it's a mess, it's a crisis.
That's the state of our nation. These are the things we are discussing.
I was listening to how you began. I think a state of a nation thing is a very important occasion for this country. And it's a day that people map where we have been and project where we are going. But unfortunately, I was looking through the number of addresses, speeches that the president has given.
In the past.
In my view, one of his experts have never directed him properly on what a State of Nation address is supposed to be. Let me just give a small perspective. This State of Nation address is started in the United States of America. It was called the State of Union Address. And on this day, the president would address the people in terms of the priorities they had last year, the budgets, and the legal priorities that they want to have on that day. And it is still going on.
It's still going on. They still do it.
Now, being Uganda, Uganda is somehow a mixture of parliamentary and presidential type of government. Initially, being a British colonial, a former British colonial or protectorate, we would have gone a parliamentary system. But we took the presidential system, and that's why you have things like State of Nation address.
We started with the parliamentary system, and then we ended up with...
So in a State of Nation address, in most cases, in the United States was given at the beginning of the year. For us, we try to give it as we project into the beginning of the financial year. And for that purpose, the president sometimes uses this opportunity to continue with his philosophy of the NRM, which is a good thing. But I would think that he would concentrate on telling us what he promised us last year, what he has been able to do, and where he needs to take us in the next year, because we are going to pass a budget next week. And you base your budget on the priorities that you have for the country. In this case, the president normally gives us a story from 1986, which is okay, but that would have been in the introduction to tell us how things were and how they looked. But now we want an accountability for 1 year. By the way, the president is the senior public servant. He's the senior public servant of this country. And as a senior public servant, he's given money by us, the taxpayers, every year to run our country. So he's supposed to give us a breakdown of what he managed to do using the money we gave him last year and the resources that were given to him, then take us to a projection of what he would want us to do next year. But when you look at our State of Nation address, it is normally a speech where the president makes a lot of fun and a lot of things. But for a Kampalan, for a Ugandan, for a person who is here, there are certain things that you are looking at. I will just give you my own expectations, which would have been from the State of Nation address. We have had, after COVID, we started running our country back to what we were. One of the major problems that everybody, even you, Kenneth, and everybody who is listening to us, that they are facing is the skyrocketing school fees in the country.
The cost of education.
The cost of education. Irrespective of UPE, USE, and all the other programs, you know the percentage is still very low. For example, you see USE only caters for 27% of our students who go to USE school are only 27% of the students who finally sit their exams in secondary school. UPE is about 37% of all the children who do PLE at the end of the year. So majority of us are educating our children in private schools, or at least government aided schools. They are very expensive. They are very expensive. And for that matter, a normal salary earner to pay school fees in most of these schools is a hassle. And therefore, people, instead of getting money to save, to invest and do other things, the only investment we are making is school fees. So I would have wanted to hear, what is the president? Because by standards of the president, he must be aware of what is happening in that arena. He talked about UPE just generally, and UPE has been a story that everybody has listened to. We don't want to listen to that anymore.
He actually also talked about reforms that have been conducted.
Yeah, those reforms, if you cannot access education, they would just be nice things for you to listen to as music. You have to sit in class to attend to those reforms. By the way, the new curriculum is a very expensive thing. If your child is going through that curriculum, you have to buy books. Sometimes the buying of books is more expensive than the school fees itself. You buy every book and material and so on. It's a very demanding thing that needs a lot of government financing, which government may not be able to do. Number two, just look at the cost of health care in this country. You just pray that you don't want to fall sick or have a problem. That's why I was rushing from where I was coming from. In fact, somebody suggested that I jump on a border. I refused. Because if you get a problem with the border, my friend, it is either death or being amputated or something that is very funny.
Or you end up at the casualty ward.
Yeah, the casualty ward, and you know what that means.
I
know
don't
what
know.
that means.
What does it mean?
Number one is very expensive. It is very frustrating. You may end up losing your part of your body. Number three is public transport. In Uganda here, I'm just talking about problems that are really affecting the common person. This is one of the countries in Africa that does not have any form of public transport. Nothing. Except the small train which moves from Namamve to town, to the town center here, to Narukolongo. There is no form of public transport, either in plan or in action. We don't have anything. So this is a sector that has been left to gambling. So people are gambling. These days, people board border from Kampala to Kasese. From Kampala during Christmas, you need to do this. It's dangerous because that slows production. It slows everything. People delay to reach office because they are struggling in a very unclear transport. The cost of just managing a vehicle in this country is too high. It's exorbitant. The roads are bad. I have heard the president talking about the number of tarmac roads that have been increased.
And those that are going to be worked on.
Yes. I think these days he's traveling a lot in the air. He needs to travel on land and see how roads are getting worse. If you are going to Jinja right now, it's a nightmare. You can finish 6 to 80 hours from Jinja to Kampala. This one is a fact. Now you can imagine this is the main entrance into Uganda, or the main opening to the port. The road is just too bad. In fact, it has, if you see from, for example, from Seta to almost Jinja Town, the road is just ditches and potholes.
All right.
And that goes to very many other, Kampala, rotten. Kampala now is just a rotten town. So those are issues that are affecting people.
All right.
So you would want, if you read the 51 pages that the president is talking about, you would need specific things that talk to such problems that are dear to people's hearts than giving us generalities.
All
That
right.
you see, GDP was 5 USD billion when I came here. Now it is this. That one does not really answer my problem.
All right, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. That's the voice of Dr. Jambo. But let's go for a break now. Keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. When we return, we'll get more details from what the president said during the State of the Nation address. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We continue up. Now, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Our topic of discussion today, we are looking at the major takeaways from the State of the Nation address, which was delivered by President Yoweri Museveni earlier today. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host, and my guest in studio, Mr. Julius Mukunda, Senior Economist and Executive Director, Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, Dr. Robert Ojambo, Senior Lecturer and Head of Department of History, Archaeology and Heritage at Kyambogo University. He's also a political analyst. Now, Mr. Mukunda, earlier you talked about a number of issues, including what impressed you and what you think needed to change. We've heard from Dr. Jambo almost hinting on some of the key issues we thought that were left out. But now let's look at this ambitious plan, which is contained in the 4th National Development Plan, which the president launched today, which is one of the major highlights of the State of the Nation address today. $500 billion over the next 10 decades. That's the size of the economy that... tenfold. And the president says Uganda is unstoppable, talks about how we are going to grow rapidly. When we get the oil, we'll be growing in 10 figures, double digits, that's what he says. And he says the NRM is delivering on the agenda of transforming this country. This ambitious plan, will it deliver, or it might be like those other plans we have had in the past? Because I remember even the 3rd National Development Plan had flagship projects, including the standard gauge railway, waterways, and etc. Not a lot was done in that regard.
Yes, I think that answers our ambitious plans. I do believe that the 500, the 10-fold growth strategy to ensure that our economy grows from the now we're actually at 60 billion, from 60 billion US dollars to 500 US dollars. I believe that it is achievable. The challenge is you cannot achieve it doing the same things that you are doing now. It requires you to change your strategy on delivery. And I think being ambitious it's okay, because even when you look at the current budget, actually the budget of the next financial year, 2024-25, it's 72 trillion. The NDP budget for 2025-2026 is actually 60 billion.
What's happening to the budget, man?
So you really find actually that we have the money to execute the program, because the NDP is anchored on the 10-fold growth strategy of the government. We really it's not because we don't have we do have the money. But when the rubber hits the road, to understand the actual thing that you're supposed to do, then you will return back.
Do we really have the money? Because I can see we are borrowing, and you've been one of the things you raised earlier was where we are actually going to borrow. You are of the idea that they should not be thinking about borrowing from the local market, because it's going to frustrate the private sector. So do we really have the money to finance this ambitious plan?
It's only the rich who can borrow, Anderson. When you're a poor man, you can't borrow. It's only the rich. Because you have no credit history.
Okay.
Your ability to pay back is questioned, so you won't even get the money. So it's only when you are rich you can get. So
we have the money because we can borrow. We have the ability to borrow.
No, because we have the capacity to raise resources.
Okay.
borrowing and also internally.
Okay.
And I think the challenge, the borrowing part would not be bad, but is that our capacity to use the borrowed money is the problem. So that's why me and you will say, why don't you relax on borrowing? Because we know you're going to die, you're going to be choked with the loans, and you will end up not paying. So the 10 for growth strategy is okay, but the government needs to fundamentally change the way it executes its program, including putting the right team to deliver. Because really in today's world, where you find that you need to invest in tourism. For example, I have been told that Burundi generates more than 65% of tourist receipts. And you go to Burundi and the roads are so bad. There is no electricity. There is no internet. But you still say, oh, they will still bring money. You are joking. So if you want to get it, you want to have that dream, to achieve that dream, you need to reallocate resources. Remove it from where your strategy is not going to place most emphasis and take it to tourism. You need to say, if agriculture is my flagship program, agro-processing, then you can't make it number 5 as a priority in the government and give it only 1 trillion for it to be able to deliver. And half of that, you are depending even on foreign aid. You need to change that particular mindset and say, okay, let me consider. We are giving a very good example of milk, for example. To say, oh yeah, I think I need to invest heavily in my dairy production so that I can export it. That is the only way you can do that. And you're not going to do it with only dairy. You must do it each and every crop that you have. So you can really see right now that most Ugandans are growing coffee. I didn't know about that. Everybody is running back to grow coffee for only one reason, that there is a red market for coffee. So if you can't invest in a securing market for your products, like how we have done for dairy, then we can keep on dreaming the 400 billion economy, and it won't be able to come. If we want to achieve this 400 billion economy, then fundamentally we need to begin to say, this priority comes first and this is going to be last. So if we have our ATMs, then it would require that you are going to spend less on administration on administration costs, for example. Remove leakages, remove wastefulness, so that you can be able to concentrate and have resources to put in those programs that they can deliver for you. So that if anybody touches the money, then you know how they are going to reprimand them.
All right.
So I think, for me, really, I believe that the 500 billion economy, we can achieve it, but not in the current way we're executing programs.
Dr. Jambo, your take on this?
Yeah, I like President Museveni. He normally does a good job to give us good hope. And you know, when a country does not have hope, it can't thrive. I think he means well sometimes. He means well in the things, as my colleague is trying to say. He really sees the opportunity because the President of the Republic of Uganda has a lot of information, both economic, political, and otherwise. So he knows where the resources are. He knows how those resources can be put into money. But the only problem I have seen with our government, the government of Uganda, it is different from planning and doing. The planning is done very well.
Excellent.
But the implementation part of it is disturbed by politics. The biggest disturbance of our implementation of government programs is politics. And it is because we have failed to differentiate between the state and government. In fact, the state has been taken over by government. State would be the machinery that runs government. And here we have the police, we have the fourth estate, we have the infrastructure of public service, and
the
so
institutions.
on. Those are supposed to be the state. Unfortunately, in Uganda and in Africa generally, institutions have been been swallowed by strong leaders. So you have a strong president, you have a strong minister somewhere, you must have a strong prime minister. Countries which do well, like the Scandinavian countries and many other countries in Europe which are doing well, if I asked you, Kenneth, you may not know who is even their presidents. But they are doing well. They have technocrats. In this country, you find that we have so many politicians than the people who are supposed to do work. For example, look at, I have been passing around and you just see a litany of posters. People want all sorts of offices. But you ask, what are they going to do? As councillors, as I don't know what do they really do? What value addition do they add? And these guys are taking a lot of money. When the president is making the State of Nation address, at the back of the mind, the major thing is the next election, not to run a country. And this goes on to the districts. Look at the money that is given to the districts to do real work. It's laughable. And that's why I laugh at people who struggling for districts, that they want districts so that they can bring services near to their people. Because in this country, districts are formed on a neutral budget. If you have been a district and they cut you into three, like now Tororo is going to be, there is a city and 2 districts, they are going to get the same budget that they have been getting. And now the people are waiting that they are going to get services. But remember, they are going to produce, we will have a woman representative for the city, a woman representative for the 2 districts, you have a district side on. So you're just creating administrative units. But the work they are going to do, the hospital will remain the same. The hospital which has been there. You have seen these Bushenyi which have been divided. Still, when they have a problem, they have to go to the main hospital in Bushenyi from Mitoma. There is nothing, I can tell you. So the 500 billion, Uganda is a very rich country. One time I was talking to a friend of mine and was telling me that if Lake Victoria was in Europe, that alone would be enough to run the country. Fresh water, big, it's the biggest lake in Africa. It has a lot of other uses that can be put there. For example, there would be no need for me to struggle with the traffic jam from Entebbe to Mukono. If I can just cross from Entebbe to Mukono, to Jinja, to wherever. But you go there, there is nothing. There's nothing. The lake is there. These days, soldiers are the ones patrolling it, that they are protecting little fishes in the lake. Instead of making sure that this lake is productive, they put in more fish. You see this tilapia that we have here.
The president said because of that deployment, the volume of fish has actually increased, and it is reflected in what we are exporting.
I can tell you, sir, there is no reduction. I mean, increase or what in fish. It's just that you have denied it to the people who are supposed to eat it. So you are picking it and taking it away. The common man now in Jinja, in this Majanji, in what, cannot access fish. And that's why you are seeing, because you cannot deceive me. The lake is producing the same amount of fish because you have not put there any other variety. Since the Mzungu put there the Nile perch, which other one have we put there? So for me, I think you need the technocrats more than politicians. That is number one. Number two, we need to differentiate politics and governance, because our people do not differentiate politics from governance. To raise those 500 billions, you need governors. You don't need politicians. You need people who are technical, people who are geared to production and doing things. I want to ask you, sir, you remember when Kampala did not have a mayor? What did we miss?
That time when Sebagala was away?
No, when Lukwago had been kicked out of office. What did you miss as a Kampala person? What did you miss? In my view, that is the time when most of the things were done in Kampala. So we concentrate on politicians and not governors. And even the president, as my colleague was saying, much of the money is spent on politics. You see, like this PDM. PDM wouldn't have been a bad thing. But now it's run politically. And once it is run politically, you will find that the biggest percentage of the money will not do the work that is supposed to be done. Secondly, our resources are still redundant. The president has been talking about exporting raw materials. And you would think that therefore, because of that thinking, you would need to see something very big that is being done by the country. Of course, he has talked about laboratories being started, but I have not heard a plan that we want now to put money on making sure that we melt all our iron. In fact, much of the iron products that we have here, iron and steel, are made from fabrication. We are just fabrication of scrap. We are not yet doing the real getting iron ore and making steel or iron out of it. So I would have wanted to see in the speech of the State of Nation address. Yes, that's where you want us to go.
Okay.
What have you done to make sure as a country, because there are certain things that cannot be done by private sector because they're expensive, and the private sector also would want to see something which is working. They have promised, for example, processing industries in many of these places, in Nakaseke, in Ruwero. What has happened to them? They have launched them, by the way. I've seen on TV when they are launching a pineapple processing factory in Ruwero, a coffee processing something in Bukoma Simbi. But these things end on paper. They don't come. So if they came, they would push us to that 500. But the problem is, as I told you, the difference between politics and governance. Lastly, the issue of tax, this tax thing. I've seen now Uganda is really because if you can, I don't know what the economist can say, is one of the country where we pay a lot of tax as an individual. My salary, I pay 40%. Before I even touch on anything, 40% must go. Then I have to pay indirect taxes, which I pay when I'm buying things. So at the end of the day, the disposable income for me to buy goods and services is very low. And when the disposable income for the people is very low, therefore the demand is not good. Right. And the industries you are talking about and those other things that you are talking about will not come, because the forces of demand and supply say that there must be demand for supply to come.
All right, we have comments coming in from the listeners, so I'll read out some of the comments to see how they have perceived the discussion we're having here in studio. Muchungu's listen again from Kira. He says, right of way, which may be equivalent to compulsory acquisition, is a good concept and definitely should serve the country a lot. The questionable part is its administration, call it governance. We have all been here for some time and we have seen many other good endeavors go south. I can never blame citizens. Let's begin with good governance. That's a comment from Chunguzi there. Patrick Obonyo, listen again from Busega. The State of the Nation address is just like the news bulletin, and I'm sure 80% of the citizens have already forgotten what the president said in his speech. Honestly, we are good at making good speeches, but the problem is on the implementation. If we could just implement 3 items in the budget, supervise it, and follow the project to its logical results, we will be far by now. Then we have another comment. We project to collect 30 trillion in revenue as a country, and we have a non-debt repayment of 30 trillion as well. The import of this is that the money to fund all other things, including corruption, will be borrowed. On inflation, let's not be deceived. Prices of manufactured goods increase daily, while prices of agricultural products, which either remain or even drop. The so-called stable inflation is being ensured by farmers. Okitwi Joseph, listening in from Kiambogo University. I left listening to Sona, to journalists. We, the young people, are wondering whether the old will leave anything for us. Very Museveni is telling us history only. Talk about corruption, abductions, education turned into a business. We have another comment. Thanks for the program. Dr. Jambo has articulated everything and spoke my mind. It's a clear indication that the country is just off track, and as pertaining what the president and his close friends think, or Uganda may God uphold thee. That's a comment from Mike. Another comment, thank you for the program. I entirely agree with Dr. Jambo regarding the format structure of the State of the Nation address. The president has never addressed his mind to the right and appropriate format of State of the Nation address, perhaps for one reason, that the performance of government in particular is always minimal. That's a comment from Alan, listening in from Ntungamo. Good evening, comrade. That is Prince Haika, listening in from Dubai. Uganda is having a vehicle production of buses. Why can't they enroll these buses to link up the major cities created in Uganda, a city link at the subsidized cost through Road Transport Authority to bridge transport so that private transporter can now engage in transport of gold, not passengers. This of goods, not passengers. This way will create market for Ugandan goods and As they say, charity begins at home. That's what he says. Then we have a comment from Dan. Mr. Museveni, in all the nation's address, is particularly always interested in how to improve revenue collection, which mainly benefit him, dairy promotion for his cows, security of his grip to power, and his re-election. All other things like school fees, health services, does not matter to him. He's only interested in things that benefit him as a person and his close allies. The president should have spoken to Ugandans to nurture a mindset change, beginning with his own, and work to see a cultural and transformative shift towards better governance and rights for Ugandans. The figures reflect resources owned by the few. The fact that we have seen the same faces for 40 years and counting means that we have not moved. In 1986, we had less than 10 million. Now we have 45 million. Of course, some growth takes place. Look at Rwanda's growth and our growth. Here we have accepted mediocrity with a few big men shouting for 40 years. Well, that's the feedback that we're getting from the listener. I want to begin with you, Mr. Mkunda, very quickly as we come to the end of this discussion.
Yes, thanks, listeners. Thanks for the comments. I think the question for me is on two things I just want to comment. One is on comparative acquisition of land for national development. And I think I agree with Muchunguzi that sometimes you have very good intentions, but its execution goes wrongly. We can have this comparison and people begin acquiring land for themselves. Somebody says, oh, there is a road here. Kumbe, the guy is just going to take that for himself. And that's why you begin, there is a strong mistrust between the state and also its citizens. Even when you want to do a good thing, people are like, you guys, you are like to grab my land. So if we don't address that, I'm telling you, these are some of the challenges that we're going to start, we shall continue to face. But I think there are certain things that the president really needs to look at really very critically. And I have said this, Kenneth, Chira Motors, for example, we've invested millions and millions of dollars in this project. I agree, we want to do science, we want to produce, but they have now produced 39 buses.
And they already have market. That's what the president says.
Yes, you can have market, but if you can, Kasaja was here with us, our minister. He went and said, can you please give us 200 goats per week? He thought he had goats. He could not get them. So if you have a market and you're producing 39 buses after 2 years, why can't I know we want to do sciences. We want to be
comparative advantage.
Yes, but there is no way we are going to beat Japanese in the construction of buses or in any motor industry. But we can beat Japanese in the production of maize, in the production of milk, the things we have comparative advantage on. So some of our things are really misplaced priority, and we are wasting government and not government, but we are wasting taxpayers' resources. So the president really needs to calm down among these things. One, we have our minerals. Let us concentrate on how we can get them. If you go to Karamoja, we have.
Okay.
But our ability to invest and get them is very important. Is still very important.
All right.
And lastly, if we don't get this oil on time, 5 years down the road, we are in a very big problem in terms of our debt payment.
We are cooked. Dr. Jambo, your closing remarks.
I want to start from where my colleague has ended on the issue of science. All of us would want really a scientific society. But the people who are reading for the president the script of science, they must be misleading him. I give an example of this man. He's this very popular man now who has become very popular in innovation called Magola. You are giving Magola in a supplementary budget 676 billion in the supplementary budget. Chambogo University runs at a budget of 150, now the proposed 154 billion. Makerere University, Makerere our prim, runs at a budget of around 437 billion. And you are giving an individual to get for us a vaccine for ticks. it is terrible. If you gave that money to Makerere University and Chambogo University, they would innovate a lot of things through students,
They
through
would have
so
more
many things,
vaccines for
and
more
a lot of
things.
vaccine.
All right.
But by and large, you know, the president gives this as a political statement.
All
and
right.
therefore, you do not blame him so much, but we would need a country where the State of Nation address speaks to the problems that are affecting the common man in Uganda.
All right, with that, we come to the end of Spectrum. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for making time to be here. Thank you very much, dear listeners, for tuning in and also contributing to this discussion. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, great songs and great memories with Bibi Jr. as he does the Soul Train. From me and the guys here in studio, we wish you a good night.